It's time for the second half of the round of 32. Welcome back everyone to another Battlebots review. Last episode was extremely exciting. Despite the controversy and drama, there were some incredible fights and we were set for some even more just amazing battles. Let's not waste any time and let's jump into the review. Quadrants 1 and 4 were our focus for today, and there were some crazy fights here as always. Minotaur versus Fusion had the potential to either be a complete squash or completely down the middle, as we saw when Fusion fought Witch Doctor. Cobalt versus Fusion would be a great vert fight that could go either way, and the other fights were so difficult to predict that I was intrigued just to see how they would go. And one of those fights was Black Dragon versus Ripperoni. Black Dragon actually had a different look. I think Black Dragon is meant to look more like their Lucky Duck this time around. This is a case of a more conventional and hardy robot versus a less conventional but just as effective in its own way robot. Now I felt Black Dragon had it, as with any new design there's always some teething troubles that comes from the first iteration that you have to improve on in subsequent seasons. And I felt Black Dragon was going to be the first robot to really push Ripperoni. The battle begins with Black Dragon racing out, but Ripperoni keeps their distance to get up to speed and get some awesome hits in on Black Dragon. Black Dragon rebounds and gets some hits in return, but Ripperoni soon returns with some more shots, taking out Black Dragon's weapon. Black Dragon soon begins pushing Ripperoni around, and the rear flywheel on Ripperoni soon seems to give up the ghost as they begin gyro dancing everywhere. You even notice the motor for the flywheel on the ground, at least I think it was the motor. This leads to a crazy back and forth where Ripperoni is landing some major hits on Black Dragon, but Black Dragon just keeps the pressure going, shoving them and having them bounce around on their spinner. Soon the flamethrower on Black Dragon ends up getting caught and the robot is on fire, but we know that Black Dragon can keep on going even when the flamethrower is taken out, as they keep shoving Ripperoni around, taking them onto the upper deck, where Ripperoni actually stops moving. With that, the pizza is counted out. And what an amazing opening fight. This was one concern I did have with Ripperoni, is that we never really got to see them take on a fellow spinner for longer periods of time. You know, usually it was a case of Copperhead with its majorly bad driving mistake, Endgame with a majorly bad driving mistake. We never got to see a situation where Ripperoni went toe-to-toe with a big-time spinner for a longer stretch of time. And Black Dragon really got to expose the weaknesses in Ripperoni's design. With that being said, I think Ripperoni has so much potential getting this far, even with the issues that cost them tonight. And I'm almost certain that next season, they'll be back stronger than ever. Black Dragon, meanwhile, is such an exciting robot. As we've seen with it and Copperhead, sometimes it isn't about having the craziest weapon, sometimes it's about that perfect balance of reliability amongst that weapon power. Then we had Cobalt versus Monsoon, which I was excited for because I knew it would be a powerful vert-on-vert fight. I felt Cobalt had the better shot. You know, it's an established team, an extremely powerful robot, and I just felt like if the two verts were to clash, Cobalt's spinner might just do more damage. But with the reach of Monsoon, I knew that there was still potential for a shocker. The fight begins and Monsoon races over, but Cobalt gets the better of the initial exchange, but misses a second ram. They get Monsoon with the next weapon-on-weapon collision, but it's a dead heat on the third. Cobalt sends Monsoon into the screws, but Monsoon retaliates with some monster shots now that the wedges on Cobalt are gone, leaving only the forks. Cobalt takes some time to back away and goes again, but makes little of it as Monsoon soon rips off the forks and flip Cobalt over where Cobalt is unable to self-right. Now this is something I didn't think about. Of course, the moment Cobalt loses those forks, there's not much it can do as it's an incredibly steep robot. So the moment Monsoon took those out, of course it could only ever go Monsoon's way. And I gotta say, that was an incredible performance from Monsoon. In the end, it really did have Cobalt's number. Honestly, I think maybe it's time for the Cobalt team to revisit the carbide design for Battlebots. maybe it wouldn't do much, but I think it'd be kind of interesting. I think Cobalt's really good, don't get me wrong, but I'd be interested to see how they manage to push the carbide design in the Battlebots, and I wonder if the issues that Cobalt has with the steep wedge might end up being too big a problem for them, especially as more robots are getting incredibly low to the ground. You know, in a world of piano keys, you gotta wonder, you know, is this gonna prove to be too big a problem for them? Either way, I mean, I'll still be happy no matter what. If they bring Cobalt back next year, I'll still be happy. It's still a really good robot. But it's just me fantasizing more than anything. Either way, I was super happy for Monsoon to pull out this major victory. Next up was Minotaur versus Fusion. And I gotta say, I'm still ecstatic that Minotaur is the #1 seed. It's probably my favourite Battlebot. And just seeing it get that recognition as the top-seeded robot this season was amazing. I honestly expected this to be the main event, which tells me that this fight will be a lot more one-sided before it even began. Now, I saw Fusion had no wedlets on their vert, which in my opinion was a major mistake, as in my opinion it made the vert completely useless, which, given Fusion's whole thing is that both weapons are very viable options, and that having them both like that means that no robot really has a guaranteed option. I just didn't understand it myself. Now the bot battle begins, and Fusion does shockingly get the first hit on Minotaur, and then another. Just as this fight is looking like it might actually become a major back and forth, Fusion catches on fire, and it is out right there. What a shame for Fusion to go out so quickly, so easily. Good lord, I can't believe it went out. Like, this fight, you know, that's crazy that Fusion's gremlins came to just kill it like that. Now, I did see a belt come off of Fusion, so I do wonder if that played a part. Maybe something got sucked in or whatever. You know, I've heard that can sometimes kill a robot. But either way, it's a massive shame for Fusion to go out so easily, but as a massive Minotaur fan, I'm very happy to see them move on. And honestly, I'd love to see them finally win the giant nut. Then we had Hydra versus Deathrow. This honestly was so hard to call, as we know that Deathrow is one of the more vicious robots, but it has a terrible ground clearance. It of course tries to make up for it with that big vertical spinner, but it was going up against Hydra, which is one of the most low to the ground robots in the competition. But on the flip side, Hydra's really bad at taking spinner shots, which meant that single mistake would cost Hydra the battle and the competition. Now, in the beginning, Deathrow hangs back to get up to speed, but Hydra is not wasting any time, racing over and immediately begins flipping them around. Deathrow, of course, keeps on going, as it's one of the wildest spinners that just doesn't give up if flipped over. Still, they're no doubt struggling to deal with Hydra, who just keeps throwing them around. Soon Deathrow does get an almighty shot in and gets the spinner completely stuck in Hydra's armor. Now that is an incredibly deep spinner shot, and it shows what I was saying about how Hydra's not very good at dealing with spinner shots. However, Hydra is lucky in that in this case, the damage seems to be mostly external. Still, it means the fight must be paused to see if they can unstick the machines. Thankfully, Deathrow was able to be unstuck and the fight could continue. The fight resumes and Deathrow begins trying to spin up the weapon again, but clearly Deathrow is having some issues. Deathrow's drive is off and their spinner has given up the ghost. Hydra meanwhile has lost part of its drive from that mighty spinner hit. Unfortunately for Deathrow, with no spinner there is nothing they can do, as Hydra has enough drive to keep front on and get a few more flips in. It goes to the judges who in the end give it to Hydra, and while it did peter out in the end, this was absolutely exciting up until they got stuck with Hydra going harder than ever with those flips and Deathrow going out with one gigantic spinner shot. The round of 32 has been amazing, as even the weaker fights have been fun to watch. Quantum vs Ribot was up next, and Quantum had been absolutely amazing this season. I was concerned against Ribot, as while Ribot has had a tough time this season, they really came back with a vengeance with their vertical spinner form, which is what they were obviously bringing out this time around. And again, Ribot's force are still not symmetrical. There's 2 long and 1 short on one side, and 1 long and 3 short on the other. Ribot, do you not have enough forks? Please, please balance them out, I'm begging you. What is this? Now the battle begins and both robots meet in the middle, and Ribot has done an endgame, getting their forks stuck in the kill source slot as Quantum gets a bite in, but decides to not get that aggressive, hoping that Ribot was stuck and would be counted out, but this was such a critical mistake as Ribot soon gets free. Quantum is then hit in a major way and gets back, but have a major gash on the underside. They try to get the pressure back on, but one more massive hit takes them out. Man, this fight hurt the most, given Quantum's lack of aggression when it mattered most. If they'd have gone in like Ripperoni had with Endgame, we might have seen a different outcome to the fight, as they could have gotten in a critical bite that might have taken out Ribot. But Ribot is finally back and bringing back the pain to their opponents. Still, as much as I love Ribot, I was praying to see the unconventional Crusher going around further at the very least. Then we had Switchback versus Malice, and Ray Billings was back in the house! Ray still wasn't taking part, as at the time of recording he was still recovering from his hand injury, which, don't worry, he's all good now, as you'll see in my RoboGames 2023 review, but he is here to rep the other big horizontal spinner in the round of 32 in Malice. Now Switchback raced out, but has their vert in the air for some reason. Malice punishes this and pins them against the screw to get some horizontal shots in. Switchback does utilise their articulating arm to keep the pressure on, and escapes, where the two exchange some lovely weapon shots. Malice once again pins Switchback against the screws to get more blows in, where Switchback's spinner dies. Malice keeps going, they are unrelenting with their horizontal spinner, while Switchback backs into the pulverizer with one half of their drive gone. Malice's spinner isn't working as nicely as I imagined they were hoping, as they have to back away each time to get up to speed, but the weapon shots are as nasty as ever, as Switchback's weapon chain falls out and Switchback looks badly dented. Malice then runs into the kill swords as it runs in for the kill shot, but Switchback is proving to be very durable in this fight. In the final countdown, Malice gets some last sparks in on Switchback as the fight goes to the judges, who of course give it to Malice. Honestly, I gotta say, this was a brilliant showing from Malice. While Malice doesn't deliver the kind of shots like the legendary Tombstone, they have enough power to slowly break down a hardy opponent, and as long as the robot keeps working, then as we can see here, it can devastate you over time. Then we had Beta versus Whiplash, and this fight was going to be painful. Beta came in with that anti-vert front, which meant there was no question who was going to win the ground game. And let me make it clear, I understand on paper why they go with this. In a fight against like Whiplash, it means that the spinner and the lifter have less to grab onto. You know, a spinner can't do as much if there's less to bite into, and with a round shape like that, there is less to bite onto. My problem has always been, though, that while yes, it does reduce the amount of damage they take, it reduces the amount of stuff that the opponent can grab onto, there's then nothing for you to utilise to get under your opponent and take control, which their regular wedge is very good at. And honestly, I've been burned one too many times to be confident about Beta's chances heading into this one. Now the battle begins with a cat and mouse chase as Beta starts chasing Whiplash around the box before both finally meet front to front. There was a lift retaliated with a hammer shot before the second verse ends up being the same as the first. Then Whiplash came in with a shot on the backside, sending Beta over the screws and onto the upper deck, where Beta's drive sadly dies right there and the fight is over. Now, while this fight was disappointing, I'll give them this. The boat might actually have been kind of the correct choice for this fight. I'll admit it, the boat might have actually been kind of useful here, as Whiplash, when trying to drive to lift the front, they clearly had some issues due to the shape. Sadly, John Reed's bots tend to be extremely weak in the back, and that is what did them in the end. Whiplash once again gets a chance at redemption as they move on to the round of 16. Then we had the main event, Sawblade versus Blip. Blip actually came out with some extra top armor and 3 small but resilient looking hinged forks at the front. The two both try wedging each other, and despite some initial wedgings, nothing is made of it at first, as both robots are driving around like crazy, including Sawblade narrowly dodging a flip from Blip. The moment Sawblade gets under Blip though, we get to see that hammer saw come into action, doing some massive damage to Blip and ripping off the two longer forks. The moment they get loose, Sawblade then takes them to the other set, getting some more digs in, and they just keep ramming them around. Blip does manage to wedge Sawblade in, but I think their flipper died after some of that initial damage, so even when Blip is able to make wedge attempts, that's all they can really do, get some rams in here and there. Sawblade, however, gets some more amazing blows in. Every time Blip wedges Sawblade, outside of a brief ram, they're just unable to do much else, and Sawblade just immediately ends up retaliating, continuing to strike again and again, attacking that top armor, which is actually absorbing the damage amazingly well, but unfortunately there's not much Blip can do except just tank it all as the fight goes the distance, which of course is given to Sawblade. I've got to say, this was a fun fight. You know, Blip obviously lost the judge's decision, but between the durability and the fact that they were able to repeatedly wedge Sawblade, they were no slouch in this fight, keeping the pressure on even with no weapon. Even if it was a downhill slope for them, they refused to back down at any point. Still, Sawblade is one of the best driven robots of all time and never let up for a single moment in that arena. Blip, try as it might, was done for, I think even before the buzzer sounded. Now in the Road to the Giant Nut, we got a bot autopsy with Ripperoni, a quick glimpse of Jevin World of Woodrow, and a great explanation of how Ripperoni was able to be achieved and do as much as it did. Also, Anna absolutely roasted Chris Rose. I won't spoil how. This is a segment, again, that you really do just have to see. And it's why these robots are so impressive to behold. There's a lot that goes into Ripperoni to make it, like, a surprisingly good new design. They do a bot memoriam showing the robots that fell in the round of 32. And man, it is so sad to see so many designs trying something different for at this stage. You know, we've seen, like, on the spinner front, there's robots like Ripperoni and Fusion, which were trying different things at the spinner design, just go out at this stage. We've seen Claw Viper go, we've seen Quantum go. Oh my god, it is so depressing. I will say, it was kind of funny seeing Reese Hewitt being clipped saying, "Son of a bitch," as he left with Fusion though. That was kind of funny. Then after that, they had Martin Mason and Jonathan Schultz talking about the fight they're going to be having next week. Seeing Huge's wheel in the hands of Chris and Kenny really shows just how crazy they are. Like I've said before about how the durability of them is probably not on the same level as a robots like Gabriel's with the holes that spinners can hook onto, but still they are surprisingly thick and resilient regardless. They once again go over the strategies, which again is just fun to hear about. I've really been enjoying this Road to the Giant Nut segment, as it is truly great to hear from the builders. Overall, I can see why they went with the other half of the round of 32 first, as it just hit that much harder, but I still had a lot of fun with this episode. It's honestly a shame to see some of the more fringe designs like Claw Viper, Beta and Quantum eliminated in the past two episodes, as I was praying we'd get to see more amazing action from these killer robots, and get to see spinners get put on notice about how other designs maybe won't win the nut but can really shake things up. Them getting to the round of 32 is definitely testament to that, but man, I was hoping they'd go just a little bit further. Still, even some of the robots I imagine no one expected to do well have had some amazing fights, and it's been so exciting to see, and I cannot wait for the round of 16. Anyway, if you enjoyed this review, please be sure to leave a like on this video, subscribe if you haven't already, and be sure to hit that notification bell to be notified of future videos on the channel. I'm posting a lot at the moment. I try to post whenever I can really, and I'm just doing a bunch of different content. I'm always experimenting. You can always be sure to get new reviews from me, and I also try to stream. So yeah, there's plenty to enjoy, and I hope to have you along for the ride. Also, if you can share this video around, then that gets more eyes on the channel. Anyway, with that all being said, I'll see you all next time. Bye guys!